I'm gonna let it shine, even in my home. I'm gonna let it shine, even in my home. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. When I see my neighbor, I'm gonna let it shine. When I see my neighbor, I'm gonna let it shine. When I see my neighbor, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Show my love.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the Sunday service of the People's Church of Divine Prophecy. Thank you all for coming today and sharing your light, love, hope, and happiness here. A couple of quick housekeeping rules. Please silence your cell phones unless you're law enforcement or medical personnel. I'd like to ask Marie to light the candle symbolizing the unity of body, mind, and spirit to start the service. Thank you. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the first hymn. Dear Father God, we give thanks for this moment and peace, harmony, and hope. May we be guided by that true nature of who you are, of peace, harmony, and hope. May we feel that unconditional and unlimited love and hope for ourselves as well as those around us. May we express that as we move through our day, moment by moment. The next part is a reading by the pastor where I talk about something that occurred with me in this past week, and I put it into a spiritual perspective through a principle or philosophy I'm trying to practice in my life. Today is something more of an observation that I made about myself. In times gone by, when I used to get really upset with somebody, it used to drive my thoughts for days at a time. And I couldn't get it out of my mind. And in the last couple of days, something's happened very sudden where I've been able to correct course naturally and go right back to my hopefully peaceful self. I think I'm fairly peaceful, but that's a subjective decision some of the time. But I find through daily meditation, daily spiritual thoughts, that I find myself not becoming so personally affected by what goes on in the world around me. I don't feel that God's planning against me or I'm being punished for wrong actions by some greater deity. I find myself trusting that guiding hand of God in my life and being comforted by the fact that God is there. Someone was asking me the other day, how do we straighten out an organization that I'm part of because there's so much problems there? And I told them pretty simply, I said, well, the only way you can really correct anything is to expand the good, not try to deal with what's wrong, because there's always going to be something that's wrong. Somebody can always find something that's wrong with things. So the spiritual approach is to expand the good, and the bad will just naturally begin to become less. In my past life, still breathing, I'm not talking about reincarnation, my past life before I became who I am today, was a little different story. I would combat conflict and stick to it and just like a dog with a bone, not let go of it until I was dead. But like I said, through practicing spiritual principles, it doesn't mean I don't get angry or upset in the moment. I'm still a human being. I managed to revert back to my spiritual thoughts pretty quickly. Because again, I have a trust in them, and that's what you have to have, is a trust You have to believe that they work in your lives. It can't be something convenient that's set aside when it's time to be an animal or time to be scared. It has to bear you through all the time. And that's where I'm finally beginning to get my life. So practice your spiritual principles, observe them, and put a trust in them. And you'll find yourself well cared for. Thank you. The next portion is the healing portion. I'll ask Judy and Reverend Steve to take their places behind the chairs. The way this works is I'll be leading you in a guided meditation during the service, and you'll hear this at different times, which means that a chair's become vacant over there, and you can go over there and sit in a vacant chair and get a contact healing and still enjoy the guided meditation. I'll be doing it today. Ashton called. She normally does it and said she's going to be out today. She's homesick. So we'll just give her some hopeful thoughts during the service. So if anybody that would like to get a contact healing would like to take a seat over there now, we'll start the service by reading the prayer for spiritual healing on the back of the hymnal in bold. I ask the great unseen healing force to remove all obstructions from my mind and body and to restore me to perfect health. I ask this in all sincerity and honesty, and I will do my part. I ask this great unseen healing force to help both present and absent ones who are in need of help and to restore them to perfect health. I put my trust in the love and power of God. The rest of us will now begin to just find a comfortable way to sit in your chairs and just begin to relax your minds and bodies. And begin to feel that gentle breath within your body. Just feel the normal rhythmic breathing as you are naturally in your life. As you begin to feel this natural breathing of life, I want you to feel the calmness that that brings with it. As you feel that calmness gently beginning to permeate throughout your body and mind, it begins to bring a gentle calmness with it. As you feel that calmness gently spreading throughout your body, you begin to feel an inner purpose within this, an inner rhythm within the inside of your body. As your body has a natural rhythm, so too does your spirit. As we begin to gently feel that sense deeper within us, we feel the pulsing and movement of spirit within us. We feel it from head to toe through every atom and cell of our bodies. This is where spirit exists and inspires us, at the very cellular level of our bodies. We feel this spiritual intelligence within us and give a momentary thanks to the mind of God for this connection to us at this personal level. Honor that connection at this personal level. As you feel that honoring and that reconnection to that which is always there, you feel yourself gently moving up that connection through the top of your mind to God's mind. You begin to see yourself as a thought in the mind of God. That thought of creation that you exist and spring from. And as you draw closer to that thought in the mind of God of who you are reminded that only perfectly harmonious and perfectly balanced thoughts can exist within the mind of God. As you see that thought, you begin to feel that perfect balance and perfect harmony of the original creative thought of you moving down this connection into your mind, into your body. As this perfect thought washes over you, around you, and within you, you feel an ordering and a harmony within that. As you feel that ordering and harmony that has not been aware before, you feel yourself lifted up to a spiritual plane of existence. Feel that grace. Feel that peace of the Spirit. This is what you begin to vibrate at. All discord, all disharmony cannot exist at this level. As you breathe that in, you feel the true nature of who you are. As you feel the nature that God intends you to be, you begin to feel a sense of connection to all else that has this connection of God within it. You begin to feel your common connection to the sea of life and the sea of all creation around you, known and unknown to you. You feel the immensity of God's creation, but at the same time feel your importance and your individuality within the sea of creation. God sees all equally, helps all equally. And as we feel that place of ours within the sea of creation and life, we begin to see our connection to all those that have come before us. As we see that connection to all those that have come before us, both known and unknown to us, we feel that generational blessing of their sacrifices, of their struggles and their challenges that have in some fashion allowed us to be where we are today. We honor our opportunities today, recognizing their sacrifices of those gone on, realizing that these are opportunities before us. Whether challenging or rewarding, they are opportunities for God's grace to be revealed to us. As we now look around us to those in our current existence, we recognize the purpose of God within all around us. And if are unable to help, we agree not to interfere with God's purpose in those around us. Sitting in this wonderful sea of life and creation, we now see the Spirit again and see the eternal us beyond this moment in time. We reconnect with our spiritual being that is eternal, will continue on for thousands of years. We connect to the mind of our spiritual being and feel comforted by this existence, lifted up beyond the immediacies of the here and now. As we feel ourselves now, we begin to see that spiritual life before us. We see the hope of the Spirit and breathe that in. We see the love of the infinite and breathe that into our physical existence. we look around, we see that purpose within all around us. Giving thanks to God for this moment of reuniting body, mind, and spirit as was intended at the time of creation. Just allowing ourselves to sit in this elevated vibration of energy, realizing that the effects of this go far beyond our conscious awareness of it, giving us that trust in how the Spirit leads us, giving us that true faith of God within our lives. At the same time, balancing it with our own responsibility for our decisions and our choices. Remembering the past, but not being bound by it. Seeing today as a brand new opportunity of life and spirit. We begin now to gently relax our mind and bring one into this spiritual realm. One who we may not have said the most appropriate thing to in the past. We see their face, whether they have passed the spirit or are physically here. We see the face. We think to them what we wished we had said at that time, knowing that it has been received. Seeing that recognition of the one. We move now to another being moving into our existence. One of those in spirit who inspires us, who helps us, who touches our minds from time to time. Whether you see this one as a guide or an angel, the spiritual being is there, helping, encouraging, and loving, not judging. We thank this spiritual teacher for being there with us. Remake this conscious connection to guidance beyond our own mind, the guidance of a recognizable personal nature to us. As we breathe in this spiritual energy, we now feel ourselves made whole again. Feeling our physical body and mind and thoughts being changed by this moment of connection. Letting the immediacies of all of these things fall away and seeing the higher purpose of mind within it. Taking a moment to let go of any frustration we generated today. Taking a moment to embrace this love of God that's there for us at any time. Feeling that energy washing over us from head to toe. Healing, regenerating, and uplifting. All is possible within the realm of spiritual energy. We take time now to ask the infinite for something for ourselves. And as we connect with this desire, We feel the true power of God within this. God at rest. As we connect with this thought of God at rest, we are in connection with the true creative power of God without limit. Our own true spiritual power draws from this. For at rest and calm is the time of true spirit communication. Personal disruptions tend to break this flow. Taking time now to connect to those that have gone on to the spirit side of life. Even if we just think a thought of them. Giving thanks again for the generational blessings of those before us. Taking a moment to bring the loved ones in our mind's eye that have passed over, letting them know that they are not forgotten. And there is still one on this side that remembers their name and can call it for them. As we call the names of those moved on one by one, we see them gently coming back, smiling at the momentary connection we make with them. Acknowledging momentarily for the time we spent with them. Thanking them for the good that was brought to our lives by them. Letting go of any perceived wrong that was brought by them. Feeling ourselves changed and lightened by the experience. Feeling our thoughts moving to a better place because of this. We begin now to gently find ourselves reuniting with our conscious mind, giving thanks to this moment of connection in the Spirit, realizing that this union and this connection is there for us at any time that we choose. Now that we have made that connection, we can do it in the privacy of our own homes. Feel this joy of God and Spirit. Feel this renewal on a daily basis. Gently beginning to feel the energy finding its way back to the here and now. As we begin to feel that settling within our bodies, slowly beginning to reconnect. Slowly feeling the chair awareness underneath of you. Becoming aware of the hands within your lap. Not severing this spiritual connection, but maintaining this higher mindedness. Blending the thoughts and the senses with the Spirit. Allowing ourselves to see Spirit with eyes open. Allowing our mind to operate as one with Spirit here physically. You begin to come back. We'll end this with an inspirational reading. All is fundamentally well. That does not mean that all is well on the surface of things. but it does mean that God is in heaven and that He has a purpose for the world, which eventually will work out when enough human beings are willing to follow with grace. Wearing the world as a loose garment means not being upset by the surface wrongness of things, but feeling deeply secure in the fundamental goodness and purpose of God's universe. Thank you all. Today's speaker is Reverend Stephen Hermann, currently based in New Zealand. I knew him quite a few years ago, I guess 25-something years ago. We met in Casadega. He's actually one of the youngest spiritualist ministers from the National, was it? 17 years old. Now he's 18, so he's here with us. He holds his age well. I've known him for quite a while. We've had a lot of interactions over the years, and it's always nice. I mean, I know you've heard me say that I've known a lot of people that come here to speak for a number of years, but really people don't last that long in this craft. It burns you out. It challenges you physically. For every seminar you do, you have to change yourself and challenge yourself physically and personally. It's not just teaching courses. It's changing who you are, progressing spiritually on a regular basis. And for every hour you spend in the classroom, you spend 5 hours on yourself, and some people just can't keep the pace up. So anytime you see one of us that's been at this for 20 some odd years, it's a pretty good accomplishment to do that. I've had the pleasure of knowing Steve at many different stages of our development. We kind of bump into each other once a year, every couple of years. He's a certified medium and healer and minister of the National Association of Spiritualist Churches. He's just a wonderful person to be around, brings a lot of love as well as information through. Very interesting the way he works. And without further ado, I'll bring up Reverend Stephen Hermann.
So, good morning. Good morning. I'm really excited to be here. Now, would you believe I've known this guy since high school? Formaldehyde. So if you take a lot of it, it retains your bodily luster well into your old age. But actually, when we pray and when we meditate, what are we doing? We're opening ourselves up to the spirit world. And where's the spirit world? It's all around us, isn't it? So if you're really working with the spirit dimension, the higher subtle energies, you stay very youthful and enthusiastic. I mean, it's interesting because you can be a medium, you go to a church, there's a congregation sitting there, they're like corpses sitting there. They're completely lethargic. Is anyone here lethargic?
Times.
Possible. Because you could use an extra hour's sleep. But with the spirit world, they're completely active. And sometimes you have these theologies that are presented. Well, the physical body doesn't function anymore, so what happens? You bury the physical body. And then miraculously, at some point in the future, there's a resurrection. How many of you have ever watched those zombie movies? So, that's the concept. And yet, you could hold that concept dear to your heart and actually buy into it. And what's going to happen when you go to the spirit world? You know, the body falls apart, you kick the bucket, you go to the spirit world. All these beliefs, and that's exactly what they're beliefs, they're not going to necessarily change the reality of the situation. So we have people, they have 3 PhDs, and having a doctorate is a very good thing, very educated. All of you are deluded for believing in this. This is pseudoscience, because we know that life is just a bunch of random chemicals, completely mixed together. Therefore, it's completely impossible. And you could say, my gosh, I drove over to Casadega Spiritualist Camp and I had a session with a medium. That person's a con artist. They were cold reading. Now, this is what some people will say. I used to teach a lot of courses in colleges, mediumship. So I would pass out these skeptical critiques written by these people who don't believe in it, scholars. And they would watch these TV mediums and say, I got this person in 5 minutes. They asked 47 questions. And only 3 of them were hits. The rest were all no, so to speak. We're all negative. And then they'd analyze, oh my God, the person's just fishing for information. And the person working is probably very sincere. But then maybe it came across like they were fishing for information. And yet, regardless of what your own personal speculations are about this, the reality is we are eternal spirit souls and we have these physical bodies. One of my students, she's up in Virginia, in Richmond, Virginia. She's a prominent retired forensic psychologist. Now, she's one of the most skeptical people imaginable. I mean, she's used to working, she worked within the judicial system, psychiatrically evaluating elderly people who, I guess, I'm not sure if they're homicidal maniacs or what, but she had to work with these people, being completely detached and then evaluating them in terms of their situation. So she went to Casadega a couple of years ago, and she went to this group session that I was doing. And her father came through. A number of people came through. And this lady, I'm not sure why she was there. Obviously, it was directed by those in spirit. But it completely shifted her consciousness. Now, she's completely addicted. So, how many of you are into substance abuse? Is anyone here? You can get addicted. It's harmful to you, isn't it? But when you start to get into spiritualism, you start to investigate mediumships, all of this phenomena, things of the sort, you become an addict, a junkie. I mean, it's like healthy, it's a good thing. It can occupy your time, it can drive your spouse nuts if they're not into it. They will go, why aren't you home? I'm off to the development group, or I'm going to the spiritualist church in the morning. Now, I'll tell you this. I mean, what happened with this lady, she's totally into it. Fortunately, her husband's a nice guy, and he supports her. Even brought her it must have been a 600-mile trip to go to one of my workshops for a weekend. Now, this lady had a neighbor, a very prominent neighbor, who lived next door. They'd been friends for quite a number of years, way over a decade, who just happened to belong to some Christian denomination that condemned spirit communication. This is the work of the devil, this type of philosophy. And they were in Starbucks, out of all places. This is last year. And Pat said, oh my gosh, guess what? I'm studying mediumship. There's this medium, Reverend Steve Hermann. He lives in New Zealand. We've been working together, going for readings with mediums. And she's really excited about it, so she didn't keep her mouth shut. So what do you think this friend said? Pat, I don't like that. This is not good. It's evil. So, she's listening. She says, no, it's a really good thing. Steve is a really nice guy. He needs to be killed, Pat. Now, since that time, her neighbor hasn't spoken to her at all since that time in Starbucks. Like they pass each other on the road, on the driveway. They don't say anything. But I'll tell you this, regardless of that neighbor's misunderstandings or conceptions, what do you think is going to happen when it goes to the spirit world? Because I know in my experience as a medium, we have people who come to us for sessions, and they have relatives or people in spirit they come through who would not have accepted any of this stuff, possibly due to theology, or possibly just due because they've been educated in a very secular way, and just intellectually rejected any type of idea about religion or God. But with what we do with mediumship, is it's all based on scientific principles. It's not just some type of sentimental philosophy. We go into the afterlife, we wear these white hospital gowns, and we float around, and everything is wonderful. Everything's perfect. Well, I didn't have the psychotherapy for 47 years like I should have. And then I go over there and it's instantly eradicated all the psychological issues, all the character imperfections. And yet the reality of the situation is, if you haven't done the work when you're here, What's going to happen? You know, you just are in denial that you even have a problem. You're a total jerk to other people. Hopefully no one's a jerk here. But on a human level, you know, we are placed in situations where we want to punch the first person in the face. We might want to buy a handgun and go after them. And you wind up in prison for a few years, and what happens? Hopefully, it'll shift your consciousness in a positive way. We might learn. And yet, people go into the world of the Spirit, some of them professing to be deeply devout to whatever their theology that they're adhering to. And it's a rude awakening, because there's therapists in the spirit. There's healers in the world of spirit. And based on where you're at, in terms of your own personal development, you end up having to basically work on things that are incomplete. We have to take responsibility. And that's one of the teachings. It's universal. That's been conveyed from the world of the spirit. So the personal responsibility aspect, it's very, very, very important. So you have someone, they go to a medium, and what do they ask? I mean, the pastor, Reverend Steve Adkins, in the drive over here, he picked me up from Casadega. He was telling me about this lady recently that came for a session. And our very close relative came through, and she was sobbing, crying. I mean, it floored her, the information, how evidential. So what did she ask when it came to questions? Well, can my sister tell me what stocks I should invest in and buy? Well, what Steve said was, my gosh, was she good at buying stocks? No. So why would you ask that type of advice? Do you know how much effort it takes for the loved ones and others to come through to us? How much effort it takes to create the right conditions, to actually rehearse and learn the process, the mechanics involved in this. There's so much effort. You can just imagine if you had some relative, maybe they were in Asia, you know, just quite a few thousand miles away from here. You know, maybe you could only make one phone call to them. You hadn't spoken to them for 16 years, and you loved them as a child or someone very dear to you. And then you try to call them up, and maybe it's a faulty connection, you know, it's not, and you're able to get through for 3 minutes, and then the person asks you something like that, out of their own lack of awareness. Because what happens is you know, people think, oh, I'm going to go to the psychic fair. There's going to be someone dressed up in a turban. Can you imagine if your pastor wore a turban in here? I mean, you see people like this. If you go to some places in California, they have like these aluminum, literally, it's like tin foil. And they're in touch. I think it's the Galactic Brotherhood. So they'll channel these people. Yeah, I mean, it's literal true. You know, they'll be having, well, it's a Roman Catholic priest who's coming through. He's Irish. But presently, he's living alive as an alien on another planet. You'll have 50 people packing the room, packing the building. But when we work with the world of the spirit, if you go to a medium, you want to test spirit, don't you? You don't want to throw out your common sense. And the people in the world of the spirit, it's all orchestrated beforehand. Now, the medium might be working very spontaneously in terms of what they're bringing through. And yet, it's been carefully orchestrated and planned out by those in the world of the spirit. I want to hear from my mother. And if the medium doesn't bring my mom through, I want my money back. Has anyone ever done this? Demanding things. And who do you think's going to show up? It's your aunt. And you hated her guts. Years ago in Casadega, I mean, you get some really interesting people coming to you in Casadega because it's like this tourist destination. Oh, what do you want to do for the afternoon? Well, we're in Orlando, we're in Kissimmee at Disney. Let's drive up to that spooky, freaky place and get a reading. So they show up, and I had this one lady, she was from Alabama. Now, I can't really imitate a deep Southern accent, but she has a very thick Southern accent, really nice lady. And I'm reading, you know, we're working with her, and there were a number of ladies that were coming through from the world of the spirit. I'm describing them. And I was watching her face. I usually look off to the side because I don't want to get my own mind involved in it. And I noticed that her whole facial expression changed, like she was a bit disturbed. And she goes, I know her, in a thick Southern accent. And she was mean to me. She was, and the word she used rhymes with witch. And these ladies coming through had been quite abusive to her in terms of her, they were like aunts of some sort, but they weren't nice to her. So why are they coming through from the spirit world? And actually what they had to convey, if I remember correctly, it's very relevant to her personal situation. But the session, it's not just for you. Sometimes it's more for them. You have someone come for a session. All the information, or a large part of the session, it's for this acquaintance or colleague at their work. And one of their loved ones comes through. You've shelled out the $200 for the half-hour session. Does anyone shell out $200 for a half hour? I should raise my rates. But you go to the medium and there's this expectation. I want this has got to be covered. Now it may be covered because they want to help you, don't they? But if your colleague, maybe they're despondent or suicidal, you don't know the full picture. And they'll use that opportunity to come through. If in some way, through your influence, you can actually help that person. Because we understand when it comes to the gifts of the Spirit, every single one of us has the gifts. It varies between the individual. We have the hands-on healing. Healing's not just about fixing some type of physical body that's going to malfunction anyway. It's great, a physical cure. I have the hip replacement. I just sit in the chair. I've got gold fillings now because the healer did it from spirit. This is what people want. But it's far more important. It's touching a person on a soul level. Healing always works. And it's not just here in this church or similar circumstances. It's what you're doing on a daily basis in your own physical plane life. When we pray to God, when we sincerely and genuinely open up to the higher world of the Spirit. Because like attracts like, doesn't it? It's a law of mediumship. What you put out. So those in the world of the Spirit, if you're there and you've got that vibration, that potency of energy in your own field of light that's around you, you will draw to you doctors from the spirit world. We call like light beams. Sometimes you have people come to you, I want a reading and I don't want to hear from my relatives. I only want to hear from my high-level guides. I'm sure some mediums here have had people like that. These ascended masters. See, they're all up there on that picture right there. And you can tell the medium which one you want to come through. There's a lot of people up there. You can have Apollo come through, or Merlin. Can you imagine that? And then who do you think comes through for that person? If you go to some pseudo-medium or charlatan, they probably will bring every one of those people through without any evidence. But you may have the aunt and you didn't like her very much. Because the world of the Spirit, the higher teachers, they're the ones who literally set the agenda. And we get into development now. We want these high guides. Actually, in Lilydale, has anyone been to Lilydale, New York? Lilydale, New York, it's a spiritualist community in upstate New York. It's Cassadaga, New York. So it's a sister community here in Cassadaga, Florida. And some years ago, there was this gentleman who went on the grounds. He wasn't invited to do this, but he did this. And he was selling guides to people. If you wanted a guide, you could go to this guy, and it was $200 for a Native American Indian. I kid you not. Now, if you wanted, I think it varied. If you had a chief, it might have been a couple $100 more. Now, if you really wanted some type of biblical personality, or one of those people on those little cards on the wall, we're talking about at least $1,000, and people were paying him. Now, fortunately, the board that manages things, they found out and they threw the guy out. But this is the mentality that people have. And the spirit world that's around us, they want us to utilize our intelligence, don't they? They want us to work with the gifts of the Spirit. Allow the vibration of healing to flow through you. If there's someone who has some type of situation, you pray for this person. Through your association, that higher potency is going to work through just because what Jesus, the Master, taught. Greater things than I you can do. And that's what we espouse in spiritualism. It's not just some theology. You go to Sunday once a week. Oh yeah, everything's going to be okay. You believe this doctrine. You're going to go to the spirit world. You're going to get your condo there. It's like many mansions and condos. You know, it's really like a retirement community. Where are the retirement communities around here? Aren't there these places? They're a bit more upscale. So you're from New York. You have readings with New York mediums, and they're so accurate. And then you go there and you go to the Florida ones, and they're not quite as good. And everything's perfect. You don't have to do any work when you go to the spirit world, because you just wear these white gowns and people serve you hand and foot. But I tell you this, if you think like that, it's not the way it's going to be. And they are actively involved in trying to improve themselves. You know, they'll come through from spirit and say, my God, I was here in the physical. I didn't do a good job. You know, I messed up a bit. You're messing up too. You need to change. I mean, they will tell people in a nice way. I was at Temple Heights Spiritualist Camp, which is right on the coast of Maine. It's been around since 1880. If you can vacation up there, it's very inexpensive. It's extremely incredible energy. I had this young lady come to me, and she said, 2 years ago, I went to one of your group sessions. You gave me the worst message, the worst reading I'd ever had in my life. I was there with my friends. And it was the worst reading I'd ever had, and I'd been to a lot of meetings. But what you told me, it was also the best reading. Because everything you said to me, and my aunt came through, I think it was her aunt, I didn't want to hear at the time, but I was with my friends, and they had all been telling me the exact same thing. And I actually listened to it, you know, because I was doing whatever she was doing, and like, you know, it was really off. So she actually benefited. But of course, to go to the medium, it's not always necessarily what you want to hear, is it? And yet if the conditions are there, and they're able to convey because they're motivated by love, they will touch your consciousness. And they will enable you to put the effort in and learn successfully and effectively the lessons that need to be completed while you're here in this physical life. And of course, when we start to study this, we start to hear voices. We might think we need to be medicated. But I'll tell you this, you're not crazy. You're actually getting in touch with who you are. Through getting in touch with who you are, you're going to get in touch with God. All of us are eternal spirit. We are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. And those who we attract to us from the spirit world, I'm not talking so much about the loved ones or acquaintances who are still a bit dysfunctional over there. I'm talking about the higher personalities. All the gifts that we see demonstrated through Master Jesus or other great teachers here in this physical world, the great prophets, that same vibration of love will work through you. So I want to encourage you, if you haven't been here that much, or this is your first time, you want to come back. You know, we've got kids here. This place should have half the congregation should be kids. Do you know that? Under the age of 20, under the age of 25, teenagers. You go to some spiritualist centers in the Philippines. It's family. And a large percentage of mediums, they're all teenagers in their 20s, going into trance and allowing the teachers to communicate with them. So we want to encourage kids. You know, don't leave them at home. If there's enough kids here, what's going to happen? They'll have the other room, and they'll have some kind of special program so they don't get bored. Because we want to spread this to people. We want to make people aware. It's not just some type of inexpensive retirement hobby or something we do inside. I'm going to go to the medium. I'm going to talk to the dead, and they're going to tell me what stocks to invest in. So may God bless each and every one of you.